Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Got Lee Kaplan here in my studios. You know him. He's a regular here on The Price of Business. Delighted to always have him in here. Always look forward. I look on the radar screen to see when Lee's coming up because he's not only a great legal mind, but a great commentator of what's happening from this legal perspective. I think is really very helpful. He's with Smeyser, Kaplan, and Veselka. You can learn more about them at skv.com. I've been really intrigued by this Oscar Pistorius case in South Africa. I think it's fascinating. I think people really struggle. You know, they hear these testimonies, and he says this thing, you know, my lady, my lady. They don't get a trial by jury there. He has to speak directly to the judge. They have these two professional jurors, is what they call them, basically. There's a name for them, but they're professional jurors that get to weigh in at the end. And I think it's a majority vote, which I guess is to his advantage. But the law, from my understanding, the law in South Africa is heavily against him, just even going in there. The preponderance of guilt is different in South Africa, and you factor in the fact that even if it's somehow some bizarre reason he's not found guilty of murder, his use of the gun was illegal, and minimal time for the way he used that gun in that context is like 10 years in jail. I mean, there's some real dicey things for this guy.
Well, obviously, I'm not licensed to practice any kind of law in South Africa, but it seems to me he's going to have a very hard time getting off. Now, his decision to testify, I think, was a wise one. Absent his testimony, he'd be convicted of something in a heartbeat. I think it's at least plausible. His story is that he didn't intend to kill his girlfriend. But to me, in the United States at least, he'd be convicted of some kind of negligent homicide very easily, because firing through a closed door without ascertaining who's on the other side, when you have a gun, so you shouldn't be in fear for your life, doesn't make any sense to me. Mm-hmm. That if you have a gun, you've got time to get your blades on and find out who's out there, or call out, or do something, or wait until they open the door so you can see who it is. And he apparently did none of those things. Firing through a closed door multiple times, to me, that's clearly some kind of negligent homicide. And in the United States, he'd be convicted of that. Yeah. Now,
what kind of sentences? Do you know that what the range of sentencing is on that?
I don't know, and I don't know how much discretion they have there. I have to guess that between their gun laws and the fact that he fired through the door without taking any account of it, is he'll get at the upper range of some sentence. If I were to guess, and it is just a guess, he won't be convicted of an intentional killing of his girlfriend, but he'll be convicted of some kind of manslaughter or lesser type of murder and get at the upper range of the sentence, just hearing all the testimony. Now, of course, we have to filter that through what we hear on CNN. So
correct.
There's always a question.
We hear 3 minute at the most tidbits here and there. And another problem I guess I have is that I don't know what their flexibility is. You know, we get frustrated with the American legal system, but it provides a lot of flexibility, including a lot of degrees of felonies and that type of thing, so that they can find a penalty that fits the crime. Well, I have no idea what their flexibility is there.
Well, in our state system, you can elect to be sentenced by the judge or the jury. I assume that sentence is done by all three, and that means maybe a little bit of a quotient verdict if you've got somebody a little less certain about a conviction or the level of heinousness of the crime. So I still think he'll get the upper range of whatever he's convicted for.
Yeah, assuming he is convicted, which seems like a pretty good assumption.
Right now it does.
Yeah, I don't see any rabbits coming out of his hat either. So something, you were talking about certainty. There remains, ironically, here in our Houston area, uncertainty about the Ashley high-rise, which you and I have talked about before. To me, it seems ludicrous. I'm not a lawyer, but I've studied a lot about rule of law. That's one of the foundations of a free and prosperous society is rule of law. And to me, the whole debate is almost an attack on rule of law. Talk about kind of give us a little bit of background and where we are today on that.
Well, the reason this case has gotten here is this common law nuisance concept. In other words, we have not only statutes and ordinances that regulate things, but what's called nuisance. And if you have a common law nuisance, that is, you do something that disturbs the quiet enjoyment of someone else in their home, then they have an action for nuisance. Now, to my own way of thinking, the real hard issue for the judge is, does the fact that the city has certain kinds of regulations and has declined to implement other regulations, or that it's approved everything they've done through the regulations it's chosen, mean that nuisance is more or less preempted? It's my understanding, and I haven't read the briefs in the case, that this common law concept is not automatically wiped out by the fact that we already have city ordinances and regulations. But, you know, if a case like this is allowed to go forward and we enjoin a building before it's even been built, then in the future, what's to prevent people from, absent a sunlight ordinance, just saying that having a tall building that blocks the sunlight is a nuisance? And
do we have a sunlight ordinance?
I don't believe we do.
I don't believe we
and
do
I don't
either.
think in a city like this that's already 600 square miles, we can't go to 6,000 square miles. The city can't spread out forever. If you want to have urban transit, you've got to have density. If you want to have density, that means higher-rise buildings. And
by the way, Houston's roughly half the size of the entire state of Rhode Island, so we do have to have limits.
That's right.
Expansion.
And we have a city in which people have affirmatively rejected zoning time and time again. Now, we actually have zoning in effect in some different ways through the city, but we don't have pure zoning. And the residents who live nearby chose to live in an area near other areas that did not have the same restrictions as their own neighborhood. And the fact that high-rises may go up is something that has to be recognized. Mm-hmm. Now, what makes it harder here is that the plaintiffs at least put on evidence that this building will affirmatively, physically affect some of the nearby homes, that it would cause cracking and that sort of thing. Now, I don't know how good that evidence was, and I understand the defendants are attacking it as legally insufficient. But it does seem to me that we cannot let private lawsuits lop off floors from every building or determine that a building that meets all the building codes and all the requirements can't go up. Otherwise, people have too much veto power over someone else's subdivision.
And Houston will become a ghost town. It will literally become a ghost town over time, because why would you want to deal with such inconsistent law?
Yeah, there's too much uncertainty. The developers may overstate some of what they're doing, but in the inner city, that is within 610, a place that needs to be continually revitalized and renewed, if the residents nearby can, in this fashion, essentially create uncertainty for developers, whether they win or lose, if they can create uncertainty by filing a lawsuit, then we're going to hurt the city.
Are the defendants going to be able to recoup any of their financial losses of legal costs? Even if they win, will they be able to recoup?
No.
And see, when people don't understand, I mean, how much do you think that was? I mean, it's got to be. It's got to be, I would think, in the 7 digits, I would think. I
would assume that their legal costs are into the low or mid millions, mid 7 digits. Now, part of that is not just the strict legal costs of paying a lawyer, but
opportunity costs.
There's that too. I'm talking just about court reporters, experts, PowerPoints, video demonstrations, and then all the other time that they've spent revising the project to try to take care of objections as they have come up from the residents.
Yep, I'm telling you, to me it's very it's harrowing, and it's not good for the economy. It's not good for business. It's not good for Houston in general. I'm really glad we have someone like you to comment on it, because to me it's really worrisome. SKV.com, that's how you can reach Lee Kaplan. I encourage you to do that. Great lawyer, great firm. I think I told you recently, I looked at your attorney's bios, and you got an awesome firm.
The younger lawyers are outstanding.
They
really are.
They're you up and spit you out, aren't they?
They're really smart, but they work hard and they have a lot of moxie.
Yeah, I could tell. You can just tell by their stories, and I appreciate your comments on what's going on and keeping us informed.
Great. It's been fun. I'll be back.
We'll look forward to it. Lee Kaplan, he'll be back, and I'll look forward to it here on The Price of Business. Best content here, it shows up over there, including this interview at usdailyreview.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.
As we know it, it's the end of the world.